All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stroke of Success interviews, where I go ahead and I interview entrepreneurs who have amazing stories to share. I typically, vet the interview, the guest, and this story touches me. I want to share with my guest. Today we have Lindsay Lovell. Is that a say?
Yep, Lindsay Lovell.
Welcome to the Stroke of Success podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning, KB. How are you?
Good morning. It's probably early morning where you're at right now, right?
Yes, for me, I'm not a morning person as a night owl, so it's 9 a.m. on the West Coast. So
Wow.
My day started.
Yeah, me and you, the same thing. For my audience, so how did I meet Lindsay? So a good friend of mine, named Taylor, who I interviewed last week, he reached out to me. He goes, "Hey, you have to hear her story. What she's doing something amazing work." And there was a bunch of components of her story that got to me. And as many of you know, I was raised by a single mom. So I'm all for woman empowerment, and Lindsay is a poster child for this stuff. Lindsay, let's get started, huh? So where were you born and raised?
So I was born in Vail, Colorado. My parents were two ski bums. They worked the lifts during the day and then met waiting tables at the same restaurant at night. But when I came along, it was time to give up that ski bum lifestyle. So my dad became a salesperson, and we shortly thereafter moved to Florida, and that started a pattern of moving every probably 2 to 3 years, which at the time growing up was a little rough, but I attribute it today to my ability to go in and make friends in any situation, talk, read people, and really force me to get out of my shell. So I grew up moving around between Colorado, several places in Florida, Southern California, and then my parents, who are diehard skiers, finally made their way back to Colorado before high school. And then I've since had adventures we can get into later that have led me international and all over, but now back to San Francisco.
Insane. That's insane. So Vail. Story starts in Vail. So a good friend of mine was recently there 2 weeks ago with his whole family ski trip, and he was just gushing how beautiful, how amazing it is. To the point where my wife and me are tempted to take our kids one day. So Vail to Florida. What part of Florida did you guys come to?
So my brother and sister were born in Stuart, Florida, and then lived in Boynton Beach and Parkland. That's
interesting. Parkland.
Yes.
Back then, Parkland was nothing.
No, not much. The school was just like temporary little, I forget what they're called, but temporary little modulars. But it was, just getting started, but loved it. Lots of, I was big into nature and pretty crawly things as a young girl. And, Florida's got all of that.
Yes. And so how old were you when you left Florida?
7.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I get you saying that it's difficult for kids to not have a foundation of a school or community. But however, I always talk about how we take the best of every situation to our advantage. And for I'm sure you know how to work with different personalities. Your leadership skills are probably up there. So good stuff. All right. So high school, where was high school?
So high school was back in Colorado, and we moved right before my freshman year. So again, really tough coming in when, at least before, as a new kid coming into elementary school, everybody knew you were new, but in high school, everybody's funneling. So nobody knows you're the new girl. They just think you're from a different school and your old school friends didn't like you. And so you're eating lunch by yourself. So I learned real fast, one way to get involved and meet people was to do that, get involved. So I wasn't super athletic, but I signed up for volleyball, and I think they accidentally somehow let the wrong Lindsay Lovell on the team because I was terrible. And after our first game, I couldn't serve for the life of me. The coach came and asked if I wanted to be team manager, aka taking me off the team. So I met a couple people through that, but volleyball, wasn't going to be where I grew my social circle, but got involved in a couple other things, and really ended up enjoying my high school experience, thankfully.
That's awesome. What did your parents do around that time when you were in high school?
Yeah, so my dad, and it's funny because he was working back in the day. He was a sales guy that went around His job was to go to the 1-hour photo shops that no longer exist, where people dropped off the film and wanted their photos done in an hour. And his job was to sell the paper and chemicals. And he saw, when digital came about, the writing on the wall. So he actually switched careers briefly, and then that company ended up dissolving, and he became an entrepreneur, and he started a software company with our neighbors who I used to babysit for, started in their basement. And again, it's crazy to think, but it's back in the day before we really had barcodes and scanners. And so a lot of these interior designers were going to shows and writing their orders by hand. And so they developed and then built out a whole platform on how to automate that. But I just remember thinking, why in the world? That's so, I could never take that risk. That's terrifying. Who wants to be, I want to collect a paycheck and know it's secure. But my dad, has always been very entrepreneurial. And I think secretly I've always had that in me.
That's crazy. You became a full-time entrepreneur when you were in high school?
Yes.
Interesting.
About to go off to college.
That's interesting. That's a really scary time for any parent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And your mom?
So my mom stayed at home with us kids to begin with, and then she was a PE teacher for a little bit. And then when I was in high school, she became an accountant, and she did that for till she retired.
That's awesome. Okay, wow. Yeah, I think entrepreneurship, some say it runs in the blood, some say you can learn it. In my case, I don't know. I think my sales and my marketing attributes I'll say my mom, but like entrepreneurship, I think I learned as I got older and interest, right? But some people you meet, they have a natural knack for it. I mean, the numbers fly off, in calculations, and they see an idea and they run with it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have that vision.
Yeah. So college?
So college, I went to Pepperdine, which is in SoCal,
Yep.
Small school. Went through some journeys trying to, again, find who you are there. It was smaller than my high school. It was religious affiliated, and I didn't grow up very religious, more spiritual. But it gave me the opportunity. I studied abroad twice, both in Buenos Aires and in Florence, Italy. And I think it was so important to, especially at that age, before the internet really was exploding, to have that experience and see the different viewpoints and cultures and just different ways of living. So that was probably one of the most amazing experiences that came out of there.
That's amazing. Again, taking positives from something negative. I love that, Lindsay. That's something about you I really am admiring now. After that, what'd you do?
So after that, I came out, graduated when, it was a little tough to find a job. And so my uncle and grandfather, my dad's side is from New York. So New York City, and they're both dentists and had a dental practice. And the one thing I was very good at growing up was not sports, not volleyball, but I was a straight A student. Valedictorian, always got A's, followed the line, but I had to grind. I had to study. It didn't come natural. And I decided I'm going to become a dentist because I see the life it affords my uncle and grandfather, and I didn't really know what else to do. And it's what I'd been told you should become a doctor, you should become a dentist. So I graduated, I moved back home, but I hadn't taken OChem and some of the final things that I needed in undergrad. So I was studying for the DAT, which is the entrance exam, and driving an hour and a half each day up to Boulder to take organic chemistry, which if you've ever taken that, it's miserable. And if you haven't, just think about it. It's the class that they use to filter out pre-med. It's like, they get 90% pulled away. And I remember just stressing taking the first test, and I set the curve on it. And I walked out and I said, I can do this, but I don't know if I'm doing it for the right reason.
100%.
And if I want to work this hard for a career that I'm not sure I really want. And so that's actually when I ended up going and working for my dad's company, which had now taken off and had some employees to figure out what I wanted to do. Wow. So my first taste of working in an entrepreneurial environment.
So you weren't going to eventually become a dentist or a doctor. And that was a big thing in your family, huh?
It was, at least on that side. My dad was very clearly, the hippie that lives out west that, didn't do the lawyer, doctor, dentist thing. But
his family, his
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but I had such a distinct memory, KB, of sitting on the stairs at Boulder and calling my friend who was doing consulting, one of my best friends from high school, and being like, Heidi, I don't know if I want to do this. And she's like, she was consulting for Bearing Point at the time. And she's like, just go find a consulting agency. And so ironically, while working at my dad's company and learning and, kind of just having the grunt job, because I didn't come with too much, I did everything from filling up the refrigerator to running meetings to putting out our first newsletter. I applied to consulting jobs and ended up getting a job with Accenture about a year later. And that's who moved me to San Francisco, where it's been home base off and on since then.
Good company, huge company.
Huge.
My cousin worked for them for a long time. He's up with Amazon now. I remember they were Tiger Woods was their brand ambassador, and I think they took him off because the whole thing happened. I think 10 years ago. Remember?
Yeah.
You go to the airport and in the terminal, you see this huge, Tiger Woods and Accenture billboard. That was impressive.
I forgot about that, but yes, they are. I mean, when you get enrolled and stuff, you have a number, and every time you call in, what number employee are you, and it's like a 10-digit. So it's definitely very massive, but doing some interesting things. And it's a great way to get exposed to a lot of different sectors and areas as a young person, if you don't really know what you want to do.
Insane. I want to touch back on a little bit about the whole family things. Like, for example, my parents are from Pakistan, and my wife's family is from Pakistan. And in our culture, Pakistani and Indian are very much into saying, hey, medicine, dental, lawyer, engineer. This is four of jobs you should do. If you don't do this, you're a loser. My wife fell for it, interesting enough. But I was on the way to becoming a lawyer myself, and very similar thing like you did. I went to the LSAT, and I pretty good. But my mentor, my sister-in-law was a mentor back then. She was a lawyer. She said, listen, KB, we love you. If you don't want to do this, this is the time, because you got to jump in a world where you're gonna be reading documents all day long, and we trust you can do it, but you have the gut feeling, and same thing like you, I opted out, and I think it's a really important lesson for my audience to understand, yes, your parents and your family have the best love for you, but you should figure it out for yourself. What do you want to do? So interesting, cool. So Accenture, good job. You're traveling at this time?
You know what? I was lucky enough to be one of the only one out of my training group that was local. Ironically, most of my training group was getting shipped off to West Virginia. So no, I was local here in San Francisco. Ironically, kind of going to the whole, not totally knowing what you want to do. At the same time, I had been applying to grad schools. Having always been good at school, I was sort of reaching for straws at, okay, what I'm good at, maybe I can go get my PhD in something. And the Accenture, I'd applied and they had hired me 2 weeks later. So it happened so fast, but we all know school applications take a long time. So while I was working at Accenture, I got a call from somebody at UCSF or USF here in San Francisco. And they said, Lindsay, we've been trying to get a hold of you. Classes start in 2 weeks. We're holding an honors cohort and the scholarship for you. We haven't heard back. And since I had moved so quickly, I hadn't forwarded my address, and they were sending these letters, my acceptance letter, and that I'd gotten a scholarship there to my old address. And I was, quite frankly, really miserable at Accenture at the time. And so I had 24 hours to decide if I was going to quit my job and go back to school full time, because that was part of the stipulation of the scholarship that they were offering me. I would have to work with a professor. And needless to say, I jumped on it. So all of a sudden, here I was back in school at USF, and it was good, but it was a commuter school. And I didn't come with, more than a year of business knowledge. So after the first semester, I took a step back and said, am I really getting anything out of this? Is this, what I want to do? You're going into debt, even though I had a scholarship. So I put that on pause and started working, kind of overlapping, but in the meantime, also started working for a private equity firm who would let me work during the day because most of my classes were in the evenings. So I left school and was full-time working for the private equity firm for about 5 years until I left for business school a second time and got it right this time.
Wow. So there's been a lot of trials and tribulations out with you. That's, I think for me, I think that's a good thing, honestly. Most parents say don't fail. I think the new motto I'm hearing in the entrepreneur circles is to fail and to fall. Yeah, and fall and learn and get up, because you can take the safe route all the time, but you don't grow as much, in the long run. At the bigger picture, I think you may be missing out on some stuff. Interesting. Awesome. What'd you do after that?
So, sort of similar to what we're talking about with our family. I wasn't, told all the time in my culture to be the doctor or whatever, but I was always told this myth: get good grades, work hard, get the good job, and you will be able to achieve all of your American dreams. And here I was, working at a private equity firm, and it was rough. I was one of the few young females. There's definitely a man's world. I was fighting my way up from starting off as an assistant to running our travel program, to finally building out our global intranet site. I didn't know a thing about coding, taught myself enough to make the coders nuts whenever I would go in there, but more working on designing the interface and being the liaison between the end users. But I hit a wall. I didn't go to Harvard, Stanford, or Yale, and I didn't have that iBanking background. So I wasn't going to go any further. And thankfully, I had a really great mentor that said, you need to go to business school this time, and you need to be very selective on where you go and think about what you want from it, and your next steps. And so I ended up, again, trials and tribulations. I applied 1 year and I didn't get into any of the schools that I wanted. And so the next year I hired a coach to help me, what skills and qualities, because sometimes we have blind spots, right? And things that we see maybe just as normal or things we do every day are things that people should hear about or we should highlight. And so she helped me bring that all out in my application and resumes. And I got into most of the schools, and ended up going to ǳ at Duke in North Carolina.
Oh, impressive. I mean, first phone call we had, I didn't hear about these schools. You're very humble, very low key, I guess. Amazing. Duke.
Yes.
Talk about Duke a little bit. How was that experience?
Yeah, gosh, it was so fun. I was debating between NYU and Duke, and they're very different in the sense of NYU, it's a big city. Everybody kind of goes to class and then goes off and lives their life in the city. And at Duke, there's nothing. You got the school and you got the school. And so, for the most part, most of us all lived in the same apartment complex. You're hanging out all the time. And so you become super, super close knit. And the passion I feel, and that network, if a Duke alumni, whether I know them directly or not, just knowing the caliber and the quality and the spirit of people that went to that school makes me, want to do just about anything to help them out if I can. And I think the biggest things that came out of Duke, and one of the podcasts you recently did, you were talking about, we speaking and fears, and I came away getting over from my fear of public speaking. And I think that was one of the best things, because that is such a skill to have in life. And then just how to take big, scary problems and break them down. Interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I think fear is something it holds everyone back. There's a female influencer on social media. You probably know her. Gottlieb. Jennifer Gottlieb, her name is.
Oh, yeah.
She's amazing. My wife's in love with her. I'm in love with her, but she thought about it the other day, like, for entrepreneurs, something that we don't talk about as much, that all of us deal with, is fear. And it's a four-letter word that we should always acknowledge and learn how to deal with it, right? So after Duke, what happened?
So after Duke, I had been in the Bay Area before here, and there was a biotech company that I had always heard, great things, #1 place to work for, always wanted to get into, but I couldn't because I didn't have healthcare experience. And so I joined the healthcare track at Duke. They come, and what they do for internships is you submit everybody that's interested submits your resume. And then they choose, 10 to interview or however many. And I did not get selected by Genentech to interview. But what you could do is some companies said, we will accept some people based on bid points. And so you could be doing these extracurricular philanthropic things and earn bid points. And so I said, I want to be at Genentech. So I took all my bid points and I bid on a spot, the 2 open spots for Genentech, and I got it. And so I went in there, and ironically, I've switched companies since, but I still work with the alumni who interviewed me. And I remember him just being like, Lindsay, you have consulting and finance, like, why healthcare? It's so specific. And I remember literally like slamming down my hand and being like, I want to be at Genentech. I want to be there. I am passionate. I'm excited, and I can learn. And so, I'm forever grateful because he passed me along to the next round of interviews. And from there, I got the internship, got the full-time job into their rotational development program, and graduated. And I went to go do sales, which was one of the reasons that I almost did not take the job, because after the internship, they said, yes, you can come in, but you have to do our rotational program. You can't just come into marketing because you've never carried the bag, you've never sold. And again, I still had that fear. The thought of, going and asking things of people made me sick to my stomach. Even growing up and selling Girl Scout cookies, not my thing. So I almost didn't take it. Thankfully I did. And their whole setup is they can send you anywhere in the US that has an open position, right? Because somebody has to have left. They just can't create the role. And I said, okay, can you please just try and place me anywhere, west, because a boyfriend at the time, and they placed me in St. Louis, Missouri, which is on the west side of the Mississippi. So very literal, as close to the east, but west you can get. And so I cut my teeth for 18 months. Again, having to make a social circle in life and learning the ways of the Midwest, selling a lung cancer product, in covering most of Missouri and Nebraska up to Sioux City.
Wow, lung cancer, huh?
Yes. It's interesting working in the area, and it's always hard to think about all the patients that you haven't been able to help, but it's amazing to be part of all the things that are coming out every year. And you probably know, with your wife and family members being in medicine, the advances is amazing.
It's insane. Yeah. You hear the stories, like you said, some, the ones that don't make it, it breaks your heart. That made me take a toll on you, huh?
It did. It was hard being in that. Every day I was walking into cancer centers. I don't have an office, and I didn't know anybody. I was out there by myself. Didn't have a social circle. So it was definitely a time of reflection, thought, and growth. And again, finding a little bit of grit. And it's interesting when you're not going to be in a place forever. That drive to build and connect with people isn't quite the same, right? Knowing you're going to be leaving. So that was, another sort of interesting experience, knowing I was in limbo. But 18 months later, they moved me back to San Francisco, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. Okay. So once you came back after what was the company called? The cancer? Genentech. Big company?
Very big company. And I loved it. I was there for 8 years. The funny thing is, I did the rotational program. I went kicking and screaming to do sales. And then I did my 2 other rotations, ended up in marketing, where I thought, was my dream. I wanted to move up and run and all this. And after having been in sales, I had zero interest in marketing. I wanted to be in front of people. I wanted to be talking. I wanted to be connecting. I didn't want to be in a cubicle. I didn't want to be worrying about, just I go here on the, sales aid, or does it go over, like all that stuff to me just didn't interest me. I wanted to be on the ground, helping and being in front of people. And so my last job, I ended up going back into sales after all that, after I completed my program that I needed to do, and have been in sales still as my W-2 ever since.
That's insane. Wow. Yeah, sales is interesting. People think sales and marketing is the same thing, right? No, dude, it's not. It's a different discipline, right? And I think from today's marketing, you're behind a computer most of the time, or in meetings, right? Whereas the sales, you're behind a computer, you're on the phone, in a meeting, outside. So there's much more to sales than not more than marketing, it's a different world.
Very
Yeah.
much. And your people skills can really help you shine in the sales world.
Yeah, 100%. What's after that?
So I was recruited away to come over to my current company, ｃឋ Senkyo, to launch a breast cancer product. Very exciting. And so that was October of 2019, went through all the training. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020. And so I was very, very blessed in the sense of, my job to go to cancer clinics. So clearly that was off limits. So I had a wonderful, steady paying W-2, but I couldn't really work. They were trying to figure out, this whole virtual thing. We'd never done that with doctors before. It's so compliant in the, healthcare world. How can we do this? And so it took them a couple months to be able to pivot so that we could at least start having some sort of interaction. But you can imagine really until, September, when we go back out into the field, it wasn't a very demanding time commitment. And I like to be busy. I like to produce. I'd always had, sort of side hustles. I did consulting on the side this whole time. And all of that stopped. And my husband said, you are going to lose all of our money trying to learn how to do the stock market. So let's find you something else. So a former colleague of his, also in sales, owns several hundred doors in Kansas City, Missouri. Said, talk to Jason. We talked to Jason. We're out on a beautiful walk in Tucson, which is where we were quarantining for a little bit. And he said, hey, here's some things, here's some spreadsheets, listen to Bigger Pockets. And so I just had those earbuds attached to my ear 24/7 and dove right in. And that was about May of 2020. And I purchased my first property in July of 2020, single family home. Again, found another informal mentor who targeted me in on a market, introduced me to his network. So I think it's so important to find mentors and coaches to help you skip the pain and dial you in, because that's what allowed me to buy a home in 2 months. And from there, kind of just got rolling, and 18 months later owned 36 stores and was financially free in the sense of, if I wanted to leave my W-2, I could. I love it. I'm very passionate about it, and it works with my lifestyle. But it's really nice knowing that if anything ever happened, I do have that freedom.
So let's go back a second. What you said, some powerful stuff. Mentors. So I get this quite often. I was a little bit heavier before, and I lost some weight, and I got a trainer, right? And I paid the trainer a handsome amount, and he got me down 20 pounds, right? And my good friend was like, why do you need a trainer, bro? Like, he's not gonna lift for you. You won't. Like, he'll stand there next to you, tell you what to do. You know what you could do. You can, monitor your own food. And the answer is, look, in the perfect world, yes, we all should be accountable by ourselves. We should have the discipline to get up in the morning or night, whatever you work out, and go work out, come back, and keep pushing ourselves, right? But however, my trainer is a good friend of mine now. He was having me take pictures of my meals. He was there for every one of my workouts. He was pushing me every week. We met the session in heavier weights, and I applied that to any type of coaching, mentorship, right? Real estate, you could sit there and do Bigger Pockets, like you said, and YouTube, and you will learn a lot. We're very lucky, the generation we're in. We have a lot of resources. Like 20 years ago, the investors didn't have these resources, right? You can go to a show. There's mastermind show on all the time. But, the way I agree with you, you should go invest in a coach and invest in a mastermind and learn instead of to figure out on your own. And you probably spend much more money, probably fall a bunch of time, which is okay to fall, we agree. But why not have, someone who can say, wait a minute, you know what? I'll get you there in 1/3 of the time.
Exactly. And with a lot, 1/3 of the stress, time, and money, right? And it's like, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've all, the example, we've all gone to college and they teach you the basics, but we get on the real job and it's not at all. And so what do they do at the office? They set you up with a mentor or coach to show you the ropes. Right. Mm-hmm. So you can learn the foundational, and yes, you can take classes, but we all know, there's no way that any thing can really stimulate or teach you until you're in the situation. And that's why you want to have somebody with you as you go through that, training you to your specific question, situation, deal, market, etc.
Yeah, it's insane. So you paid this coach, you hired a coach?
Yes. So I've hired a coach. And then I also had a sort of an informal mentor that I was very lucky that I met just reaching out on Bigger Pockets. The other great thing about real estate is people are so
open to helping.
Exactly. And Pat Jackson mindset of abundance. And so he was not afraid to say, hey, Lindsay, you guys, have your coach direct you towards this town in Missouri, and, was gracious enough to say, here's some contractors I recommend. And so, just passing it forward. But yes, and I'll be the first one to say I used to be very, especially being a straight A student, like, why am I going to spend thousands of dollars on a coach? And I can't tell you how grateful, and every time that coach brings even more than I ever thought they could in different ways to my experience. And so I usually am always working myself with one or two coaches at a time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing, Lindsay, you just told me a really good gem. I'm going to point out. You're type A, straight A, but amazing student, Duke, God's sake. But eventually, I think your mind was open. You could be at Harvard and MBA or a neurosurgeon who does perform surgery on the brain, but that doesn't mean you're open-minded. There's a really good book by Carol Dweck called something about mindset, closed-minded, open-minded, how being open-minded is one of the catalysts to success. To be open to feedback, hear stuff that you don't want to hear about yourself, right? And I think that's one of the few key ingredients in success, in my opinion. So coaching, to summarize, coaching for you was a life changer.
Yes, it was. And it got me to the point where, like I mentioned, I now had a portfolio and I was financially free. And going to what you said, yes, I had straight A's undergrad and, Duke MBA, but I had never been taught, it wasn't ingrained in me to take a risk, right? And it had never been ingrained in me. And I don't want to play the female role, but I think sometimes too, when we get together with my friends, that's not what we're talking about. But it was never taught to me to necessarily make my money work for me. Be financially responsible, save, put in your 401k, and, working with that coach, taking that money, but in that way, making it work for me, and suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, I could retire tomorrow, and never in a million years, my little wealth fund that I'd been using up until then to track my, 401k, maybe I can retire at 65. Okay. If I get a bonus, maybe 63, and then I'll eke it out till 97. But if I live longer than that, I'm totally screwed, and the fact that throw all of that out the window, take a calculated risk, there's ways to make it a lot less risky, but there's always risk, and make your money work for you. And having multiple income streams was just kind of really a mind-blowing thing that came out of just having an interest, needing to fill some time and taking on a new hobby.
That's insane. I'm going to touch on something else here too. My wife, I guess you get both of the talk, man, eventually. Same thing she has. I sit in female circles. She goes, I never, ever have any of them. Maybe once we'll talk about entrepreneurship, real estate. When I talk about real estate, they look at me like, you have a third eye or something. You know what I mean? They talk about the handbags, the Gucci's, the Louis Vuittons, and all that good stuff, right? Vacations, which is fine. It's awesome. But women typically do not talk about money. No. Right? And there's a movement out here right now in the world. I'm going to sidetrack for 1 second. And I'm in between the movement, right? There's a movement saying, hey, men should come a little bit below women and women should take over. No, not 100%, but also I have some friends that say, no, woman's place is in the kitchen with the kids, and the man's hunter, and I go hunt and I bring the money. And I'm like, no, man, I don't think that's true either. It's somewhere in the middle. I think women have a voice, women have desires, besides being a mother, a wife, of course, but or a daughter-in-law. Like, it is more than that for women to do. if a woman chooses to become a mother, God bless you, awesome, do it, right? Or to be a housewife for your husband. But if you don't, you shouldn't be shamed. And I think shaming's happened quite a bit. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, shamed or feeling not one of like different, like an outsider, and going a little bit more into personal. My husband and I got married later in life. As a female, I wanted the option to have kids, so I froze my eggs twice. I think it's very important to be open and vocal and talk about that and encourage that to people, because again, it used to be very taboo, but becoming much more mainstream. And so, highly encourage any woman, career driven or not, just to think about that. But we decided ultimately not to have kids. And that's something too, and it's funny because it typically tends to be men, but I have had multiple times where people have told me I'm selfish for not wanting to have kids. And that can often be, what also makes me feel like I'm not in some of the conversations. But real estate actually, ironically, has turned out to be really wonderful for that, because I've connected with other women. I've joined masterminds. I'm part of a group called Go Abundance, and my pod from there, the 4 of us just went down to Cabo and had a great time and could sit on the beach and talk business and talk life. And so, it really is a community of itself. But to your point, it can be very isolating for women that are entrepreneurs. And then if you don't have, that other connecting things such as kids in common with other women around you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with time, I think we're getting better about it. But I just think that you have to make it more of a topic to be discussed. In the selfish thing, listen, I have 2 kids myself, and I disagree. It's not being selfish. And by the way, if maybe it is, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Some people are not meant to be married. Let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
You're not.
I think you and I were chatting, and it's like, it's boggles my mind that, we don't expect everybody to come and want a doctor. My husband skydives. We don't expect everybody to want to go skydiving every weekend. We don't expect everybody to love cats or dogs, but yet we expect every human being to be wired the same in terms of wanting to get married and wanting to have kids.
Yeah.
And it fascinates me that those are still the 2 things that we haven't realized, are another way that we're all individuals.
Sure. I agree. So you bought your first door COVID time, 2020.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And then where are we at right now? Today's March 31st, 2022. We're 2 years after COVID, right? 3 years.
Yeah, no, three. Wow,
So
time flies.
How many doors did you buy? A total right now?
Yeah. So my husband and I, in our own personal portfolio, now have about 60 doors. And that's a mix of single family, small multi, and short-term rentals. So we got into the Airbnb space. January of last year, I started a business with my real estate agent and broker in Kansas City, who's kind of the visionary, right? Kind of said, "Hey, Lindsay, we've got the system and the talent and the knowledge, like, let's go do this." And so we started G6 Capital, which is a syndication company, in our first 3 funds, where we went out, and short-term rentals they're a lot of work, right? And often you're buying just one, as an individual owner, and putting all your eggs in one basket, and necessarily not able to do markets than the ones that you live in. And so what we did is we went out and we would buy multiple in a fund. So our first fund had 2, our second fund had 3, and our third fund had 6. And so it's giving people sort of like a mutual fund. You're able to get involved. You own a fraction of all these homes. They're in different markets. We research, we look at areas that are up and coming. We look at our, ones that are the tried and proven, but maybe not sexy, but they work. And we went out and we raised money, and that was quite the experience, going out and asking people that I knew to trust me with that. That was terrifying and empowering at the same time. And really just was, one of those lessons of putting yourself out there and having to feel confident in what you've accomplished, to then portray that confidence and inspire that confidence in other people.
Insane. So let's talk about that. So you're going out there, knocking on doors, a friend and family, say, "Hey, here's a fund, jump in, and we'll take your portion of the money, and we'll buy property." So for example, for those that don't know how syndication works, let's break it down for them. So I'm an investor. you're the one who has syndication. You say, KB, I have a project I'm working on in Kansas City, and what do you got? And I said, well, Lindsay, you know what? I have 100K. So you take my 100K, right? And then Tom, Jerry, Larry, Schwab, us five now. You have us five individuals with money in a
Syndication, yeah.
Upon a little a bowl, right?
Fun.
And then you take the fund and you go buy homes. Simple, right?
Yes.
In a simple way of defining it.
Exactly. And the whole idea is, you know, that individual that gave the 100,000, it's passive. You're sitting back and collecting mailbox money. And so we do distributions every quarter, you know, help them get the K1 so that they have the tax benefits and the write-offs. But really, it's a way for people that are busy, don't want to understand real estate, you know, but understand it's such a powerful investment tool and that you should be in it in some way, but that you don't have to go buy a home or short-term rental and run it yourself. Syndications are the solution to that problem. So fast forward to today, we're now at raising money for Fund 5. We've pivoted to start including some long-term rentals, not just all short-term rentals, you know, find that people also like, that's a bit more conservative of a play and with the market and everything, but it's been really fun to be able to tailor our product to what our investors want and need. And then in the meantime, we had a situation where we very suddenly parted ways back when we first were starting this. So a first fund with the short-term rental management company that we had sort of been, you know, relying on to build this. And again, I called a mentor who ran my Diego Corzo, who ran my mastermind. I said, Diego, what do I do? Like, and he said, Lindsay, well, calculate how much you already pay for the personal rentals I own. Plus, you know, adding forward, the amount you pay to a management company is a salary in certain cities for some people. So why don't you just hire somebody full-time? And it's so funny. It doesn't seem like a, you know, out of this world idea, but it was something in the problem I couldn't see and the value of being able to pick up the phone and call somebody. And so I said, you know, you're right. And we moved forward, my business partner and I, and we actually ended up creating Wanderlust Stays, which is our short-term rental management company. And it is run by my brother. So went into business with my family. And the beautiful thing is he and his family lives in Mexico City. So he doesn't even live in the country and can still manage properties throughout the US. So we've had Wanderlust Stays for a little over 15, 16 months now. And it's been amazing. And, you know, life is funny. That year in 2021, I had a resolution that I wanted to get closer to my brother. We didn't talk as much as I would like. And you know how it is sometimes with kids and family, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, like a month later, this happened where I'm working with him. And now, you know, much to his chagrin, I'm sure sometimes we talk multiple times a day, but it's really been amazing to build that relationship with him in that way.
Interesting. You said it was part of your mind to eventually call him, and I've come across this philosophy called law of attraction. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
It's so powerful, right? Like, we have these desires, intentions, and then you know, and like, you know, things will happen, and that the universe or God, or whatever you want to call it, will bring you there, right? In pain. In business, I use it in business myself quite a bit, right? Like when I started real estate 5 years ago, I had a dream to become a team leader. Eventually stop selling and be in the back and scale and coach, hire, fire agents and inspire them. And whatever they sell, I earn a piece of it. You know, it's really good income. But the intention was out 2 years ago. I did the work, and the rest came together. And you know, and it's funny how things work out. I mean, amazing. That's just what you're doing is amazing work. So if someone wants to get information about joining the fund and invest money, where can we find you?
Yeah. So I can be found at Lindsay Zane Lovell at Instagram. G6 Capital is our fund. We do have a web page, but we went fancy with the Roman numerals, so it's G-VI. So I can also send that for you to post the link.
And I'll put it there.
Perfect. So if you want to find out more about me or the funds, that's all there. You'll also see me talk a little bit about my coaching company, because that's something, realizing that if I hadn't sort of stumbled upon this, I wouldn't have learned. I'm very, very passionate about working, especially with women, but have worked with men too, to teach them how to make their money work for them. And that's one of the things we've incorporated into the syndication. So, for those of you not as familiar with syndications, typically you have to kind of first be in the know, right, to be offered these opportunities. Second, typically the syndication is structured so you have to be an accredited investor, meaning you have to have a certain net worth, make a certain amount, which automatically rules out a lot of people just trying to get started. And third, typically those running the syndication set the entry level, like you have to have 100,000 to buy in. You can do more, but you can't get in. And people getting started out, the people that I want to help don't have $100,000. And so we have worked with certain funds where people that, I've known personally and know they're, where they're at and really passionate, and students of mine have gotten them in for, $5,000, $10,000 so they can just get started. And that's not, it goes against what every syndicator usually advises. You don't normally want to have 30 people in one fund. But for me, it's worth it. It's up in dividends, even though I have to do 19 extra K1s at the end of the year.
So the syndication is a company of yours, right? What's it called?
G6 Capital.
G6, like the private plane, G6, right?
Yes. My husband, his hobby is flying planes and skydiving out of perfectly good planes. And so he came up with the name.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Love that name. Okay, so the coaching, that's amazing. So someone who wants to get into the real estate investing world has no clue. And especially if you're a woman and you don't want to be shamed by someone and, talk down to, what the hell is wrong with you? You're the perfect person to do that, right? I mean, you're obviously very friendly, you're very knowledgeable, and you'll break it down for them and teach them.
Yes. So I developed an 8-week course.
Okay.
Where literally, my goal too is I don't want to just take you fishing and give you a fish. I want to teach you how to fish. So not only is the goal to have you ready to buy your first rental property in 90 days, but to set you up to have an investment business or to sell it. So not only do I teach, all the basics of here's how you find a market, here's how you, analyze deals, but here's the systems, here's the back end, here's the accounting tool. And here's when you hit 10 houses, you want to move to this tool. And I'm really big in the partnership. I'm always the operations. I'm always the, how are we going to do things and how are we going to make it flow and simple and not manual. And so I incorporate that into my 8-week course. And so it's one-on-one coaching. And then after that 8 weeks, I stay on and, I say, 12 more calls or help you underwrite 12 deals. I've never cut off anybody at 12, but basically there for you through your first purchase.
Wow. That's a big help. Someone holding your hand in a way, right?
Yes.
The course, is it like pre-recorded videos they're going to go through?
No. So, eventually it'll get there, but that's also the beauty is it is one-on-one coaching time meeting with me. So yes.
Wow. That's really,
yes.
My audience listening to this. That's really rare, guys, that someone is going to be live, because I've been part of a bunch of these coaching packages. And by the way, for me, guys who are listening, guys and girls, coaching works. Try it. Don't be scared and frugal. Invest the money. But here, Lindsay is offering you live one-on-one. Wow.
Yes.
That's a good value.
Because that's also, selfishly where I get the value is getting to connect. So for me, that's an important aspect of it, maybe not scalable, but it's also not something I'm doing to necessarily, get rich or replace, my investing. It's something that is a passion project for me.
Lindsay, I'm super impressed. I'm gonna give my wife your phone number. You text her.
Thank you.
Next time in Orlando, Miami, Florida, come see us, please.
I would love that.
Talk to you. So what's next? A book, TV show? What are we working on next? So a podcast, maybe?
It's so funny. I actually just on Tuesday signed to have somebody help me write just a book beginning, help edit and put down my thoughts. Going to start small. So, we're shooting for, 5,000 to 10,000 words. Again, still have that thing that I need to get over of why would anybody want to hear my story? And, what can I, put in writing that's not already out there? But again, remembering everybody has different ways of learning. I've learned a different way and put it a different way. It connects with different people. So hopefully that'll be out in about 6 weeks. And yes, I am funny again that you say, but my coach has been encouraging me to, if you follow me, you'll notice that I've been more consistent in the last 2 months because I hired a coach to get me more on that with my social media. And once we get just that posting up and going, to start a podcast. So that is in the works, not right away. But that's definitely one of those things that is a milestone. I want to make sure I overcome that fear.
I think you'll be amazing. I think you'll be amazing as a podcast host. I think you'll be amazing with the book. I think you see you on TV, and I'm not just,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have the personality, you have the face, and the person. I mean, you'll be perfect.
I appreciate that.
And by the way, furthermore, self-development speaking, public speaking. I think you'll be great for women and men. I'll buy a ticket to come see you, but there's a lot of women out there that need a voice like yours to, to say, hey, it's okay if you're not fitting in the box, right? So to speak. So that's amazing stuff, Lindsay. Awesome. Well, God bless you for your hard work and what you're doing for the community. I had a great time talking to you. Next time I'm in the West Coast, maybe we do a face-to-face podcast, more long form, and that'd be awesome.
I would really love that. I always love meeting up in person. It's just, such a, wonderful, wonderful dynamic. I always love, come out, we'll go up to Napa, do all the fun things. But thank you for the work that you're doing too, KB, and your story, getting to hear that before we recorded and everything last week. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully connecting in person sometime.
Awesome. So audience, I'm gonna paste, copy and paste her IG handle, all information for G6, the fund that they're doing amazing work, and in the coaching program. And I would urge y'all to look at both of them, especially if people that have money don't have the time to talk to realtors and look at properties. And I don't want to discourage anyone. To become an investor, it's a lot of work. And people do it. My wife is a physician. She loves investing. However, some don't. Some have big families. Some have vacations. Some have 2 or 3 different jobs. That doesn't mean that you cannot do investment. And that's why these funds come in, and they help you a lot. Awesome. Well, thank you, Lindsay. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, KB. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.